Welcome back to WaveCast, the official podcast of the Marine Institute of Memorial University. Today is a very special episode for me because it will be my last one as your host of the podcast before I go abroad for a year. So this is a very bittersweet moment, but I am so grateful to be able to spend my last episode catching up with my old friend and fellow alumni of the ROV program, Christopher Morrissey. I chatted with Chris at the launch where he's currently working as the Ocean Technology Specialist and ROV pilot working in the Center for Applied Ocean Technology. Over the years, Chris has worked on a variety of research expeditions all the way from exploring coral gardens in the Canadian Arctic to sampling hydrothermal vents in the Indian Ocean. He's skilled in designing, maintaining, and operating ROV systems that help scientists and researchers explore places they haven't been able to explore before. Chris, welcome to the podcast.
Thank you.
I'm very happy to talk to you today. This is we were saying before, like a full circle moment for you to be back here at the Marine Institute, well, specifically the launch. So before we get into what you're doing today, I just wanted to tell the listeners about how you got into ROVs and the ocean and everything that you're interested in now.
When I graduated high school, I was looking at what I was going to do after that. I didn't really know what I wanted to do. I spent a long time doing general studies, kind of trying to figure out what I was interested in. And I had some family members who happened to be ROV pilots suggested that I take a look at the course. And once I started at Marine Institute, I really decided that what I wanted to do was a lot more with my hands. And yeah, as I continued through the program, I really kind of decided it was for me.
I didn't realize you had family members that were ROV pilots because I have never known any ROV pilots in my life. And I didn't even know it was a job until I got to the Marine Institute. So that's an interesting perspective that you had then. Where were your family members working? Was it near Newfoundland or was it elsewhere?
Yeah, so I only have one family member who's an ROV pilot and then a friend who was one. But they're both living in Newfoundland and working elsewhere. So one of them's employed through an office in the UK, and then the other one was working in Texas at one point as ROV pilots. And neither with scientific ROV work. They're working in the oil and gas industry. But yeah, I decided pretty quickly going through the program that I didn't really want to work with oil and gas, which seems kind of foolish going through that program right now. There's a lot less scientific opportunities, but I kind of got lucky in the end of things. So,
would you say that when you do the program, there's kind of two streams, or is there another use of ROVs? Like, so there's oil and gas, there's science, and then is there anything else?
No, I would say it's mainly two streams. Like you can do inspections and stuff too, especially if you do like aerial drones, which is still considered an ROV. But a lot of the time those inspections happen for oil and gas. So a lot of the work that you're going to do is for oil and gas. And even the scientific stream, sometimes you do scientific work identifying certain species and stuff so that oil and gas can rule in or rule out whether they can do something on the bottom of the ocean in that location. And obviously, on the scientific side of things, we're hoping we find these things that prevent them from working there. But sometimes it doesn't always work out that way.
But the actual work that you're doing is fairly similar when you're working in the oil and gas industry and versus when you're working in science. Like you're using similar tactics, like you're applying all of the same principles that you've learned in your courses.
Yes. Yeah.
It's just you have these different goals in mind.
Yeah. Different objectives. We're using similar tools to meet these objectives, but obviously the fine details and assembly for the small like devices that we use will end up being slightly different. Oil and gas is obviously they can afford a lot larger, bigger, more industrial devices they use for things like inspections and manipulating heavy objects underwater, where we're kind of approaching it with more of a gentle touch. Everything we sample subsea is alive or was alive, and we don't want it damaged. We want to get it to the surface as unharmed as possible.
Yeah. So you said that there's a lot more opportunities in oil and gas. But that's interesting because ever since you graduated, you've had a solid job, right, in science, and now you're here again with that sort of science background again. So I'm surprised to hear you say that because I would have thought that maybe you've been the lucky one. Is that what you think, or?
Yeah, honestly, I think that I've totally been the lucky one. At the time when I got hired at a university, a months in science was looking for an ROV pilot, and they're based out of Quebec. And one of the mandatory things was to be bilingual. So I believe no one applied for the application. And because I did, they took a chance on me. And after that point, everybody was like, oh, scientific ROV pilots are hard to come by. So this guy has experience. Let's go with him. Because there truly is only a handful of scientific ROVs all across North America. And for each of those ROVs, there's at most a team of 6 people on them. And in my case, every ROV I worked with has been a team of 1. So realistically, the number of positions supporting these devices across North America is extremely limited.
Mm-hmm. Okay, so in oil and gas, they need how many pilots, you said?
Well,
6?
Again, it depends on the operation. If the ROV, and in oil and gas's case, the ROV is in the water and it stays in the water for multiple days, then you're probably only going to have an ROV supervisor, an ROV pilot, and an ROV co-pilot. But if you're launching and recovering, then you need ROV pilot, ROV co-pilot, supervisor, winch operator, deck supervisor, and then anyone else. So that would all be at one time. And of course, there's limitations as to the number of hours that you can pilot or work in one go. So you almost need a full crew, like a double crew, so you can switch out roles and give people breaks. So,
are the dives roughly around the same amount of time for a scientific dive compared to an oil and gas dive?
Not at all. So where oil and gas, a lot of time work off of fixed platforms. And again, depending on the job, those ROVs can be down there for 3-4 days straight without coming out. And I've done that for scientific work too. I think the record that I've seen was something like 64 hours, but that's totally off the top of my head. It might be inaccurate. All I know is,
impressive to me.
Yeah, I worked multiple shifts and the ROV hadn't come out of the water.
Wow.
And versus what I'm doing right now on mobile platforms like previously the Amundsen, it would be 6 to 8 hour dive would be the maximum, and launch and recovery included.
Okay, I thought you just said lunch.
Yeah.
I like that.
Well, lunch is included too, especially on the Canadian Coast Guard vessel.
Before we talk about your current job here, I'm interested to hear about Amundsen Science and what your role was there. So you were an ROV pilot, you worked on these ships, but there was also a lot of part of the year where you weren't doing that. So maybe you can talk a little bit about your seasonal roles and how they changed too.
Yeah. So Amundsen Science, for the listeners who are unfamiliar, I guess is like seasonal work. We do one annual trip to the Arctic, in which there are multiple programs all doing research for whatever objective. And in my case, which means there's truly only one committed mission a year, about a month long, where we go up and run the ROV. So outside of that, as an ROV team of 1, I spent all of my other time upgrading, learning, fixing, and maintaining the ROV in the off season. So basically, when they commissioned the ROV, it was a total blank slate. And I came in as a new student and spent all of my time reading through all the manuals of every device on the vehicle, taking things apart, putting them back together, finding what's broken, developing an entire system for the surface. So that's a really big difference between oil and gas and science, is we do a lot of observation and recording and a lot of, data at the surface that they wouldn't necessarily use in oil and gas. So one of my responsibilities was to assemble that system of computers and video recorders and capturing devices, etc. So I managed to keep myself occupied constantly throughout the summer that when I wasn't in the Arctic. But on top of that, there was other work that Amundsen Science did too. So although on paper I only had to do one annual mission. There was sometimes 2-3 missions a year that were a month long.
And also, I'm sure that every year you have, like now Evanston Science is growing and there's more scientists that want to get on board and who have other objectives. And I know that there was someone in 2021 where they were staining the corals to see how they grew. So they were staining one ring of the coral and essentially would come back and then see if it had grown beyond where the stain was. And you had made like a case for it, right?
Yeah,
Like
staining chamber.
a staining chamber.
Mhm.
So had that happened before, or was that just something that you thought, okay, well, in these conversations that you had with the scientist, you said, okay, this is what you need, and I'm going to fabricate this whole thing?
Basically, a scientist would approach us with a problem and an objective, and we'd come up with a solution based on potentially existing or not existing things and kind of create it with items from Canadian Tire. So in this case, yes, staining chambers had been made before, not in such a small capacity in the way that we were doing it. So it did end up being quite a custom make.
Mhm.
Basically, with the only instructions we were given was we have an object this big and we need to somehow manage to stain it underwater and come back in a year's time or multiple years' time, find it and see what how many growth rings have been made on the coral in this case.
To me, there's so many logistics that you would have to deal with in that situation. You'd think of one, you need the chamber, two, you need the right dye or like a way to infuse the dye. Then you also need a way to track exactly where that one specific coral is. That's only, I think it was like less than a foot tall or something like that.
Mhm.
That is incredibly impressive to me. And there's so many like parts of that that make it quite challenging.
And that's how I stayed occupied for the rest of the year. I mean, a lot of ideas that scientists bring forward are not the easiest things to achieve, especially when you don't necessarily have experience or there hasn't been anyone with experience who made these kinds of things. You kind of have to create it yourself. So,
Is there anything like what are some of the other modifications that you've created for the ROV?
so I've made suction sampler for the Munson Sciences ROV. I mean, I've made some core sampling devices, a lot of random things that help me as a pilot, like a camera sliding chassis, just so the camera can move out further on the front of the ROV so that nothing interferes with the video. A lot of what I did, though, was changing out devices on the ROV so that we could have more capacity to add more of these sensors and tooling things. So, yeah, I've done lots, but it's kind of hard to reflect back on all of everything.
Well, that's already a lot right there.
And not don't expect as an ROV pilot that you're going to be able to do a lot of these things. Specifically me, like we said, I'm extremely lucky because I essentially am now on my second ROV where I was the one who was creating the platform. Most of these ROVs you work on, you come into and all of these things are already made and you're a pilot and you maintain them. But in this case, particularly, like I was starting from the ground up and I really created all the devices and tried to do it the best I could based on existing framework.
Let's talk about what you're doing here at the launch. What are some of the things that you're working on?
Yeah, like I said, I'm on my second ROV here now with Marine Institute out at the launch. It's a very similar ROV to the previous one I worked on, also with Forum Energy Technologies, but it's a bit smaller. And again, it's a blank slate. So I'll be working with different scientific groups who are looking at using the ROV and finding out what their objectives are and seeing how we can meet them with the ROV. Right now, it seems like a lot of biological sampling and mostly video surveying right now. So I'm hoping in the future, sometime soon, we'll have things like sampling drawers, maybe a better manipulator for sampling, higher quality cameras, and so on for our vehicle. But right now, the vehicle was purchased a while ago, and I still need to actually confirm that everything is working as the factory acceptance testing said that they were working upon delivery after purchase. So that's my main objective right now, is getting everything up and running and getting the ROV in the water and proven as a platform so that we can start advertising it and showing different scientific parties, we have this device, it works, we're ready for you to come towards us with projects. And then based on what they're doing, that's when I'll decide what path is the path we'll take for scientific devices and sensors, et cetera, to integrate to the vehicle.
Are those scientists in-house? Are they at the Marine Institute or are they elsewhere?
Right now,
universities?
it's at Marine Institute and DFO. But again, I'm sure we will be working with scientists from all over North America, probably even internationally. But again, that's not really up to me. I'm just a technician.
To have another blank slate so young in your career, it's pretty impressive.
Thank you.
You can create a new, does this ROV have a name?
It does, actually. I haven't told anybody the name. Do you want to be the first?
Yeah.
So I'm not 100% confident yet, but Midas.
Midas.
MITOS.
MITOS. I like it.
Yeah, it means
Midas.
it's like mythical, and Marine Institute Technology for Observation and Support.
The and support part. Tell me about that. What kind of scientific support, or like we've lost a mooring in the water and we'll go find it support?
Yeah, more of that kind of support.
Cool.
The main reason I added support is because as we're an industrial work site, depending on what clients come by here, they might use the ROV as well, and in which case it's different kind of support than scientific support. I don't know what that looks like yet. I'm coming in and I've been here for 3 months now, so I'm still kind of learning what this facility is all about. And I've really I live in a closet of my own ROV stuff. I try not to, but it's hard when there's so much to do.
We talked about this before, but just I think it's interesting. Do you have more missions that you as an ROV pilot are going to be going on this year or in the fall if the new ROV is up and running at that point?
Yeah, so there's one planned mission with the current ROV. Once I verify that everything is working, I believe we'll be going near Funk Island. I'd say it would be mostly for video, like videography of the coral forests near Funk Island. But yeah, again, I don't know a whole lot about that yet.
Okay, so we'll stay tuned then.
Yeah, stay tuned.
To see the footage. We were saying earlier that there are a lot of, there was the discovery of the corals. And I think that the more that the Marine Institute, we have these resources that are allowing us to go and see more, especially where the MCAs are, to have more eyes on the seafloor. And so I am excited about this because I think it's really going to help a lot of the projects that we have and the students' projects that we have at the Marine Institute. My last question, because this is for students also that are listening that might be interested in this ROV program. So do you have any advice to give to a student that's either starting the ROV program or is thinking about it coming out of high school?
If you're looking to go into the ROV program, do it. I think it's a great career path. You'll enjoy what you're doing as long as once you start, you find you want to be working with your hands, whether you're interested in information technology, like working with computers, etc., navigation, or you want to work with motors and hydraulics. Like ROV has a little bit of all of that. You really become a master of none. You're jack of all trades if you're an ROV pilot. Yeah, and you'll get to experience some things that you'll never experience in other career paths. Like going to the Arctic as an ROV pilot has been absolutely amazing. And yeah.
Is there anything that you've seen that has really been a highlight in your time as an ROV pilot? Or is there a moment that you've had working with Amundsen Science, for example, that has really stood out to you?
Yeah, there's a couple of moments that stand out. Just the discovery of some of the coral forests. Maybe I wouldn't have been so shocked if I were to stumble upon it myself, but with all the scientists standing in the back of the room, ooh, whoa, you're like, oh, this is cool, yeah. Or I've worked around some sea vents near South Africa. That was pretty cool too. You wouldn't be able to see those without being an ROV pilot. They can be 10, 20 meters tall, spewing black sulfuric like smoke underwater.
I'm happy that we got to chat today about all of this.
Me too. Thank you for having me.
Yeah, thank you for joining the podcast. Thank you to Chris for joining us on this week's very special episode. If you are thinking of enrolling in the ROV program, or maybe you just have questions for Chris, or if you even want to chat to him more about the wonders of the sea that he's seen, feel free to send an email to wavecast@mi.mun.ca. Now, of course, I wanted to say thank you so much to all of those of you who have listened for the past 2 seasons of WaveCast. And I wanted to especially give a big shout out and well wishes to our producer, Kate Saunders, who has been the MVP of this podcast and has very much been a behind the scenes but majorly important role. And she has worked so incredibly hard to learn the ins and outs of podcasting with ease. And without her, we certainly couldn't say that we are a 2-time award-winning podcast. And yes, that is true. We have the trophies, I guess. So thank you again to Kate for your exceptional work. And thank you also to Carrie Lynch, the co-host of the podcast now, who has come on board and has just been thriving in her new role as a co-host. And of course, thank you all for listening to WaveCast.